Before the sun had fully risen that crisp autumn morning, I was already awake, listening to the distant hum of neighborhood life in Crestwood Estates. The early hours were usually quiet, a time for reflection and the occasional cup of coffee on the porch. But that day, something was off. As I sipped my coffee and scanned the rows of pristine houses, I heard an unusual commotion. A series of rapid knocks and hurried footsteps approached my front door. I pulled aside the curtain, only to see two uniformed figures, albeit not the real police, but clearly representatives of our overly strict homeowners association, discussing something in hushed tones as they pointed at my front yard flag. You see, for years I had proudly flown a flag that was not like the others in Crestwood Estates. While nearly every home displayed a tasteful, subdued emblem of community pride, mine was vibrant and unique, a striking national flag that I had rescued from a storied past. The HOA had recently updated their guidelines, and apparently, my flag did not meet the aesthetic standards they now demanded. Moments later, I received a letter, a fine for disturbing the community's visual harmony. I was stunned. How could a piece of cloth inspire such indignation? My first reaction was disbelief, and then a slow, burning anger. I had always believed that freedom of expression extended even to the symbols we choose to display. I'd spent years in diplomacy, using my voice to represent my nation's values on the world stage. Yet here I was, a former diplomat, now living incognito in this quiet suburb, being punished for flying a flag that reminded me of my proud heritage. I could almost hear the smug satisfaction in the HOA's automated notice. They believed they were preserving order by silencing individuality. Determined not to let this travesty stand, I resolved to set the record straight. I knew that behind my humble appearance lay a secret that even the most rigid enforcers of community order could not ignore, a secret that would change everything. I grabbed my phone and began recording as I stepped outside, prepared to confront the fine with calm defiance. Today, the HOA would learn that real authority is not defined by conformity, but by the strength of one's convictions and the truth of one's identity. And as the uniformed enforcers continued to scrutinize my flag, little did they know that the very symbol they despised was intertwined with my past, a past that, when revealed, would shock them all. Crestwood Estates was a neighborhood that prided itself on uniform perfection. Every house boasted carefully manicured lawns, symmetrical landscaping, and a quiet adherence to the community's unspoken aesthetic rules. The Homeowners Association, HOA, ruled with an iron fist, enforcing regulations designed to ensure that every resident contributed to the neighborhood's polished image. It was a place where conformity was not only expected, but demanded, and even the slightest deviation was met with swift retribution. At the center of this regimented world was Karen Benson, a woman in her early 50s known to everyone as HOA Karen. With her impeccably styled hair, tailored outfits, and an ever-present smartphone, Karen had built a reputation as the neighborhood's self-appointed guardian of order. She patrolled the streets with an intensity that bordered on fanaticism, quick to report any behavior that deviated from her narrow vision of perfection. To her, every unsightly element was a threat to the community's image, and she took great pride in maintaining what she saw as the rightful order. In stark contrast, I had always marched to the beat of my own drum. My home, though modest compared to some of the sprawling estates in Crestwood, was a labor of love, a blend of modern design and a touch of international flair. At its heart, however, was a symbol that set it apart from every other property on the block, a bold, colorful flag proudly flying from my front yard. Unlike the muted emblems adorning my neighbors' homes, my flag was a vibrant declaration of identity, a relic of my past in international diplomacy. For years, I had flown that flag as a reminder of where I came from and the values I carried with me. It was not merely a decoration. It was an expression of freedom, of pride, and of the rich heritage that had shaped my life. Few in Crestwood Estates knew my true story. I had spent decades in the corridors of power, representing my nation's interests on the world stage. I had negotiated treaties, built alliances, and yes, even contributed to designing some of the most iconic symbols of our modern statecraft. But after years of serving at the highest levels of diplomacy, I chose a quieter life here, one where I could remain under the radar, living simply yet authentically. The juxtaposition of Karen's rigid worldview and my unconventional lifestyle created a tension that was almost palpable. While Karen worked tirelessly to preserve a vision of uniformity, I reveled in the richness of diverse expression. My flag, with its bold colors and intricate design, was a testament to the beauty of individuality, a beauty that the HOA fine threatened to silence. And though I'd hoped to blend into the background of suburban life, fate had other plans. When the HOA issued a fine for my flag, citing vague aesthetic violations and threatening penalties for any further noncompliance, I knew it was time to fight back. This wasn't just about a piece of fabric. It was about the right to express oneself, to honor one's heritage, and to stand up against a system that valued conformity over creativity. The fine was an affront not only to me, but to every person who had ever dared to be different. As whispers spread throughout the neighborhood, and my soon-to-be-recorded protest began to take shape, it was clear that Crestwood Estates was at a crossroads. Will we continue to live under the suffocating grip of outdated rules, or would we embrace the freedom to express our true identities? The stage was set, and as I prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the HOA board and, of course, with HOA Karen herself, I knew that the coming days would determine the future of our community and my own place within it. The controversy erupted the moment the HOA letter arrived. I had barely enough time to process the fine before Karen Benson's smug face appeared on my neighbor's social media feed. In a series of posts laden with self-satisfied righteousness, she detailed every supposed violation, claiming that my flag disrupted the visual harmony of Crestwood Estates. To her, my flag wasn't a symbol of heritage. It was an eyesore, a blatant defiance of the carefully maintained order. Furious yet composed, I decided to respond not with anger, but with undeniable evidence. I set up my camera to record the unfolding drama. My plan was simple: document every moment of this absurd conflict and let the truth speak for itself. I began by posting a video on my social media, calmly explaining the history and significance of my flag. I talked about my background in diplomacy, my service to my country, and the personal meaning behind the flag, a symbol of freedom and identity that had accompanied me through years of international negotiations and historic moments. As my video spread, the reactions were swift and polarized. Some residents, initially loyal to the HOA's rigid enforcement, began to question the fine. I never knew his flag had such a story. One post read, while another declared, "If it represents freedom, why should it be fined?" But Karen's supporters remained staunch, and soon the community was divided along ideological lines. At the same time, the HOA board convened an emergency meeting to discuss the growing uproar. Board members, long accustomed to Karen's uncompromising approach, found themselves facing a backlash that was both personal and public. I was invited to present my case at the meeting, a prospect that filled me with both trepidation and resolve. With my digital portfolio and security footage of my property on display, I made my case. I detailed how the flag was not a frivolous decoration, but an integral part of my identity and a symbol of my career. This flag, I explained passionately, has flown over rooms where international treaties were signed. It represents decades of service and the unwavering belief in a better, freer world. To fine it is not only an insult, it is an affront to the very principles of freedom that we all cherish. The board meeting quickly turned heated. Karen, who had expected to defend her actions with bureaucratic jargon and references to outdated bylaws, was taken aback by the evidence and the passion in my voice. Several board members expressed their support for my stance, while others clung to the old rules as if they were sacred. The debate escalated, with emotions running high. I could see that the issue had grown beyond a simple fine. It was now a battle for the soul of our community. Social media continued to fuel the fire. Neighbors uploaded videos of the meeting, and online discussions erupted with hashtags like hashtag flag for freedom and hashtag HOA fine fail trending throughout the day. Many residents who had once felt intimidated by the HOA now saw this as an opportunity to reclaim their voice. I received messages of support from people who identified with my struggle, those who believed that true beauty lay in diversity and that personal expression was a right, not a privilege. But Karen was not done yet. In a scathing email circulated among the board members, she accused me of using my past achievements to deflect from the violation and insisted that rules were rules. Her tone was as cold as ever, but even as she ranted, it was clear that the tide was turning. The digital evidence, the overwhelming support from residents, and the passionate debates at the board meeting left little room for her to continue her tirade unchallenged. As the day progressed, the conflict reached a fever pitch. I could feel the eyes of the community, both online and in person, raining down on me, urging me to stand firm. Every shared post, every comment of support, and every rebuttal to Karen's baseless claims reinforced my resolve. This wasn't just about a flag or a fine. It was about the right to live authentically, to honor one's heritage, and to resist an oppressive system that sought to smother individuality with conformity. By the end of the day, the stage was set for a dramatic showdown at the HOA's next public hearing. The community was abuzz with anticipation, and it was clear that every resident in Colonial Heights was ready to witness a turning point. The digital evidence and passionate testimonials had transformed my personal struggle into a rallying cry for justice, a call that would soon echo through every corner of our neighborhood. In the days that followed, the controversy over my flag fine spread like wildfire throughout Colonial Heights. Social media exploded with heated debates and supportive hashtags such as hashtag flag for freedom, hashtag HOA exposed, and hashtag not an eyesore. Videos of my impassioned defense and the detailed history of my flag were shared widely, and soon the narrative shifted from Karen's petty complaint to a broader discussion about the right to personal expression. Local news channels picked up the story, broadcasting segments that showcased the stark contrast between the rigid conformity demanded by the HOA and the rich, colorful history behind my flag. Reporters interviewed residents, some of whom had long felt that the community's rules stifled creativity. "This isn't just a piece of fabric," one interviewee stated. "It's a symbol of freedom and a reminder that we should celebrate diversity rather than suppress it." The coverage not only challenged Karen's rationale, but also ignited a renewed sense of pride among those who valued individuality. At the same time, the HOA board found itself under immense pressure. Emergency meetings were convened, and in closed-door sessions, board members debated the validity of Karen's fine. Digital archives of previous complaints and evidence of similar incidents surfaced, revealing that Karen had a long history of targeting residents whose lifestyles did not conform to her narrow vision of perfection. The board was split. Some members, swayed by the overwhelming public support for my cause, argued for a revision of the outdated guidelines, while others clung to the old rules as the backbone of community order. In one particularly tense meeting, heated voices rose as one board member questioned, "How can we find someone for flying a flag that represents their heritage and freedom?" Another countered, "Rules are rules, and we must enforce them to maintain our neighborhood's integrity." The debate grew so intense that it soon spilled into public forums and town hall meetings, where residents voiced their frustration with a system that appeared more interested in maintaining appearances than in embracing individual expression. The escalating tension reached a tipping point when I received messages from other residents who shared their own experiences of feeling oppressed by the HOA's strict enforcement. Stories poured in about fines for minor infractions, unwarranted warnings, and a pervasive sense that personal identity was being sacrificed on the altar of uniformity. My personal battle with the flag fine had become a rallying cry, a symbol of resistance against an institution that prioritized conformity over creativity. Determined to take the fight to the next level, I organized a public demonstration. Along with a group of like-minded neighbors, I set up a small event in the community park. We displayed our own flags, each unique and representing our individual heritage, and held signs proclaiming our voices, our freedom, and diversity is our strength. The turnout was overwhelming, and the event was broadcast live on social media, drawing the attention of local influencers and even regional news outlets. The demonstration wasn't just a protest. It was a celebration of our right to live authentically in a community that had long been dominated by rigid, oppressive standards. As the public pressure mounted, the HOA board announced that it would hold a final public hearing to address the issue of fines for personal expression. The meeting was scheduled for a crisp morning, and anticipation ran high. In the days leading up to the hearing, digital petitions and online polls revealed that a vast majority of residents supported my stance. The hashtag Flag for Freedom became a symbol of the community's collective desire for change, and it seemed that every resident was ready to reject the old guard's outdated rules. Throughout this period, I continued to share updates on social media, recorded videos explaining the significance of my flag, interviews with residents who felt similarly oppressed, and behind-the-scenes footage of the preparations for the final hearing. The digital evidence wasn't just a tool. It was a beacon that rallied everyone around the cause. The narrative had shifted. What was once a fine for an ugly flag was now a fight for the right to honor one's heritage and individuality. The tension on the streets of Colonial Heights was palpable. Neighbors discussed the issue at length, and the sound of impassioned debates filled local coffee shops and community centers. The clash between the old order and the new spirit of diversity and freedom was undeniable. Every shared post and every rallying cry added momentum to the movement, and it was clear that the days of punishing personal expression were numbered. As the day of the final public hearing approached, the pressure on the HOA board became unbearable. The digital evidence, the outpouring of community support, and a relentless push for reform left no room for compromise. The stage was set for a dramatic turning point, a moment when the collective will of the residents would force a reevaluation of the very principles that had governed our community for decades. The decisive moment arrived on a cool, crisp morning in a packed boardroom at the Colonial Heights Community Center. The room was filled with HOA officials, local police representatives, community leaders, and residents from every corner of the neighborhood, each one there to witness the final vote that would determine the future of our community's guidelines. With a sense of calm authority and a fire born of collective determination, Councilwoman Olivia Grant stepped up to the podium. After an exhaustive review of all the digital evidence, eyewitness testimonies, and community feedback, we have reached an unequivocal conclusion. Councilwoman Grant began, her voice steady and resolute. It is abundantly clear that the fine issued against the homeowner for flying a flag that represents freedom, heritage, and personal expression, was not only unjust, but was rooted in an outdated and prejudiced mindset. This is not merely about aesthetics. It is about the right of every individual to express their identity without fear of retribution. A heavy silence fell over the room as Grant continued. Effective immediately, the HOA board will rescind the fine and initiate a full disciplinary review of the procedures that allowed this complaint to be levied in the first place. Furthermore, we will be introducing new guidelines that celebrate diversity and protect the rights of all residents to display symbols of their heritage, no matter how unconventional they may seem. Her declaration resonated deeply with everyone present, and a murmur of agreement spread throughout the assembly. At that moment, a respected community advocate, known for his unwavering commitment to fairness, rose to speak. Today, we stand together to affirm our belief in individual freedom and cultural expression, he declared, his voice firm and impassioned. Let this moment be a turning point where we reject the tyranny of conformity and embrace the rich tapestry of our community's identities. No one should be fined for honoring their heritage, and no one is above the right to express themselves. His words were met with a thunderous round of applause, uniting the room in a shared resolve. Following this, a senior police official presented the final dossier, a meticulously compiled record of digital footage, property records, and community testimonials that unequivocally demonstrated the legitimacy and historical significance of the flag. The evidence was irrefutable. The flag was a proud symbol of the homeowner's heritage and personal history, and the fine was a gross misapplication of authority. The Internal Affairs Panel unanimously endorsed strict disciplinary measures against those who had sanctioned the fine, and the full report was scheduled for immediate public release. Councilwoman Grant concluded, "Let this resolution mark the dawn of a new era for Colonial Heights, a community where every resident is free to express their identity, where our public resources are used to uplift rather than suppress, and where personal freedom is cherished above all." Our vote today is not just about reversing a fine. It is about reclaiming our right to live authentically. Today, we stand for justice, for diversity, and for the truth. Her final words, delivered with unwavering conviction, sealed the turning point in our battle for fairness. In that defining moment, as every face in the boardroom reflected shock, determination, and hope, the balance of power shifted irreversibly. The overwhelming digital evidence and the unified voice of the community had forced a decisive action that would forever alter the way Colonial Heights was governed. The turning point was clear. The days of punishing cultural expression were over, and a future built on respect, inclusivity, and personal freedom was finally within our grasp. In the weeks that followed the dramatic resolution, Colonial Heights underwent a profound transformation. News of the rescinded fine and the sweeping reforms announced by the HOA board spread rapidly, igniting a vibrant dialogue about cultural expression, individual rights, and the need for transparency in community governance. Local newspapers and online forums buzzed with headlines such as "A New Dawn for Colonial Heights" and "Community Unites for Freedom of Expression." Hashtags like #FlagForFreedom and #CulturalPride became rallying cries, echoing the community's newfound commitment to diversity. Town hall meetings and community forums were filled with residents eager to share their stories of feeling stifled by outdated rules. The public outcry that had surged in the wake of the incident spurred the HOA board to launch a comprehensive review of its guidelines. Under the leadership of forward-thinking officials, the board introduced new policies that celebrated diversity and ensured that no resident would ever be fined for expressing their cultural identity again. "Our community is stronger when we embrace our differences," declared the new board president in a press release, emphasizing that Colonial Heights was ready to evolve beyond the confines of conformity. The local police department also played a vital role in restoring trust. In a series of community outreach programs, officers explained that their duty was to protect and serve all residents without prejudice. They conducted workshops on civic rights and the proper use of public resources, reinforcing the message that accountability and transparency were paramount. "We are here to support every citizen's right to live authentically," stated a senior officer during one such workshop, and his words resonated with a community that had grown tired of arbitrary enforcement. For me, the journey from confrontation to resolution had been a transformative experience. My decision to stand up for my flag, an emblem of my heritage and personal history, had sparked a movement that went far beyond my own property. Neighbors, once fearful of challenging the status quo, now spoke out proudly about their own identities and celebrated the freedom to express themselves. The digital evidence that had once exposed a petty fine was now a powerful testament to the power of truth and the resilience of cultural pride. Karen Benson, whose misguided fine had once threatened to silence my expression, was now relegated to the annals of cautionary tales. Records of her past infractions, once zealously defended by her supporters, were now public knowledge, a stark reminder that unchecked authority can be challenged when the community unites. Her influence waned as more residents embraced the idea that diversity was a strength, not a weakness. At a final celebratory event held in the Central Park of Colonial Heights, residents, local officials, and community leaders gathered under the soft glow of a setting sun. A large banner reading "Unity, Freedom, and Cultural Pride" was unfurled between venerable oak trees, and heartfelt speeches filled the air with promises of a brighter future. Today, we celebrate not only the right to express our heritage without fear, but also the dawn of a community that values each unique voice, Councilwoman Grant proclaimed, her voice resonating with conviction. The standing ovation that followed was a resounding affirmation that Colonial Heights was ready to move forward, united by the belief that true beauty lies in diversity. As each new day dawned over our transformed neighborhood, the legacy of that fateful find endured as a beacon of progress and change. The story of how the HOA's misguided attempt to find a flag was overturned, and how it led to the revelation of my true credentials as a foreign minister, became a rallying cry for every resident who believed in the power of self-expression and cultural pride. It reminded us that when a community stands together to uphold the truth, no arbitrary rule can ever diminish the light of freedom. In the end, what began as an attempt to enforce conformity turned into a watershed moment for Colonial Heights. We emerged more united, more diverse, and more determined to build a community where every resident's heritage was celebrated. And as the sun rose each morning over our proud neighborhood, it carried with it the promise that in Colonial Heights, freedom and cultural expression would forever be cherished, a legacy built on the enduring power of truth and unity.